Here are my top 5 exciting teams to watch this season. I'm going to go over 5 teams that I'm really excited to see how they do, see how they perform, and see if they, it's usually the guys that either did well last year or they're going to do well this year because they made some big offseason moves. And I'll go ahead and explain which 5 they are. These are in no particular order, but we'll start with number 1, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this is Tom Brady's team at this point, and it's probably going to be his last season. He's already retired. He retired for 40 days, and he came back because he hadn't had enough. But this might be, I know everyone's been saying that for the past 10 years, but this might be his last season for realsies. And from what I can tell, this will probably be another easy division win, unless the Saints do well. If Jameis Winston stays healthy, and then he can do well, because that was the only problem last year with the Saints is they had no offense. And so if Jameis Winston can stay healthy on the Saints, they might be able to fight the Buccaneers for the division spot. But I think Tampa will probably still claim it pretty easily. The real question is, can they make it back to the Super Bowl? And can Tom win one more ring to complete his set of 8? I guess he wouldn't wear thumb rings. I guess that's the idea. It would be really impressive to see if he could come out and do that again at the ripe old age of 45, because he'll be 45 later in the season. It would be really impressive. And I can't wait to see how he does and how he leaves, how his legacy is left. It would, that's why I didn't think he would retire last year, because he retired on a big playoff loss. Sure, his last touchdown his last throw was a big passing touchdown to take the lead, or to tie it, I think, at the end of the divisional round, but they didn't win the game. And it would have been, it was a satisfactory end to a career, but not enough for Tom Brady. I know he wants to go out with a big bang because that's how he's played his whole career. He doesn't want people to forget the incredible things he's done because of the way he finishes it. He wants his ending to be incredible, just like the rest of his career. So I think Tampa Bay is someone you definitely want to pay attention to, especially as it goes down the stretch of the year and then into the playoffs. That's more of a playoff one. Number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. These Eagles made it into the playoffs. I kind of forgot that they were in the playoffs, but they made it last year, and they were like 9-8, so they barely got it. And then they lost pretty big to the Buccaneers, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Is that right? Yeah, because the Cowboys lost to the 49ers. Anyway, the Eagles lost in the wild card round to the Buccaneers last year, but they did do very good with their first-year head coach. I just forgot his name. They have a first-year head coach, and he's very interesting. The question is, can Jalen Hurts do better than he did last year? Because he had a problem with turnovers, and he wasn't as good of a passer, but he was very good on his feet. And hopefully, the addition of AJ Brown, who they got from the Titans, hopefully he can help them to revive and kind of lift up Jalen Hurts' ability as a passer. And maybe they can even win the division, NFC East, over the Cowboys, who won it last year. For one, to keep up the streak of every year there being a different team that wins the NFC East, that would be pretty interesting. Now, I am going to support the Cowboys. I'm kind of rooting for them, but I don't think they might not be able to match up with what their offense was last year. And so I don't know. I think if Philadelphia can compete, they might be able to take it over. And as far as playoffs go, I'm not sure if they are quite Super Bowl ready this season. But hey, who knows? Wild card teams can go on a crazy streak, wild card or low seed teams can do really well. So we'll see. I want to watch out for those guys, and they're fun to watch. I'm sure they're going to be fun to watch this year. They've got a star player in all 4 categories where it matters: defensive line, defensive secondary, offensive quarterback, and then the wide receiver, A.J. Brown. Those are the 4-star categories that I like to pay attention to. If they have one in all four, they could be good. Think about the Rams. The Rams last year, they had all four. Did they? Yeah. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, and they won a Super Bowl. So as long as you have all four, see, the Bengals didn't have all four because Trey Hendrickson, everybody forgets about him. And so they didn't. I guess Eli Apple, he also was not a star. He's more of like, people make fun of Eli Apple too much. A quick tangent: people make fun of Eli Apple too much. That was the whole tangent. And okay, on to number 3, the Denver Broncos. All right, you guys already have heard so much about the Denver Broncos this past season because they've traded for Russell Wilson from the Seahawks. Biggest offseason trade, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be really incredible to see what he can do as like sort of a second, revival of his career. Not that his career ever went anywhere. He's been to the Seahawks have been to the playoff. What? They went 9 out of 10 seasons that Russell Wilson was there. He had 9 out of 10 Pro Bowls. It was just last year where he injured his finger and he kind of played poorly when he came back. And I feel like he's just going to quickly rejuvenate, get healthy, and he's going to play great in Denver. And it's going to I think it might be a Peyton Manning sort of situation where Broncos can never find their own quarterback. So they have to go out and take somebody else's. For Peyton Manning, they just signed him in the offseason. Russell Wilson, they had to trade for him. But I think there's a good enough team around Russell Wilson that the Broncos have already built up that they could easily make it to the Super Bowl in this first year. Maybe it'll take a second year, maybe never. But I think they could do it. And they're going to be really fun to watch, especially all those wide receivers. I know Tim Patrick just had a season-ending injury, which is, pretty upsetting. But there's still Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. I did like whenever they first announced that Russell Wilson was traded to the Denver, and then Drew Lock was traded to Seahawks. They were like, "Oh yeah, Noah Fant is so happy that he's finally gonna have not Drew Lock as his quarterback." I just remember particularly reading that it was Noah Fant that some guy was like, it was like a meme or something where it's like Noah Fant when he realizes he doesn't have to catch passes from Drew Lock, and he's like, yeah. And then they announced that he was part of the package for Russell Wilson, and he's going to be in Seattle next year, which I thought was just too funny and really kind of a bummer for him. But anyway, I do like the Denver Broncos. The only question is, there's so much intensity in the AFC West that if they can make it to a Super Bowl, or they could not even make the playoffs. There's such a huge parity as far as what they're capable, their floor and their ceiling, because of the Raiders just buffed up their team. The Chiefs kind of lost steam, but they're still a really good team. And then the Chargers buffed up their team. They look dangerous. Everybody looks scary. Oh yeah, the Raiders added Devontae Adams. What am I talking about? And so it's going to be really difficult for the Broncos to compete in their division. But I feel like if they can win their division and get a good seed, and then they could ride that wave to a Super Bowl, easy peasy. I'm not saying they'll win. That's the thing. Reaching the Super Bowl is the goal. Winning the Super Bowl is the goal once you've reached it. That's at least what I like to say. All right, next one. Cincinnati Bengals. So these are the last season's runner-ups. Okay, this is what I wrote down in my notes. I wrote down, these are last season's runner-ups. Will they run it up again, or will they get run down? And that's all the notes I wrote for myself. So I'm just gonna have to wing it from there. These Bengals, so first off, Joe Burrow looked good in the season, and he looked great in the playoffs. And a lot of people are saying he's really great, and he's going to be an elite quarterback going forward. I think that he needs to find more consistency because he played good in the regular season, and he improved as he went down. And so if he can keep up the momentum and not have to show like the worst side of him with some of the higher interception count that he had, and then whenever he would run out of time in the pocket. I feel like a lot of the times I saw him, that was a lot of O-line trouble, I guess, which is a good thing because they buffed up their O-line this next season, which is going to make Joe Burrow, his life's going to be so much easier. He's going to be so much more comfortable in the pocket. I think he's going to do great this year, and he's got a great cast around him. He's got those wide receivers from last year, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Yep. And then he's got Joe Mixon still. The offense is going to look super powered for real. And the defense will be fine. It'll be good probably. And, they're going to look really good. I think they'll probably win the AFC North again, right? Because unless Lamar Jackson can stay healthy, and even the Ravens are kind of all over the place at this point. He can maybe carry a team, Lamar Jackson could, but I don't know if he'd win the division with it. He needs wide receivers. He really does. He lost Marquise Brown, and he's just got Mark Andrews, who's great, but he's also a tight end, and he can't be the only threat on the team. But the Bengals, I think, have the best opportunity to try and get back to that Super Bowl and then try and win it this next year. And, complete their Cinderella story from being the worst team ever for like 19, 20 years, besides, I guess, even including the Browns, because they just won a playoff game 3 years ago. 2 years ago? Man, that was a while ago now. 2 years, yeah. They could be, the whole redemption arc of going from the worst in the division and one of the worst teams in the AFC just like 5 years ago to being the best. That'd be great. That'd be impressive. All right. And lastly, who I'm really excited to see this next season, number 5, the Seattle Seahawks. I really can't wait to see what Drew Lock does with. Okay, I'm just kidding. Not the Seahawks. I'm not excited to watch any of their games next year. I really hope, I kind of wish they would just forfeit the rest of their games so we wouldn't have to watch them. Instead, my real number 5 is the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals couldn't keep up the pace of their early victories in the last 2 seasons. They'd win a lot of games at the beginning, go on big streaks. They had a big 8-0 winning streak to start the last season. And then they finished like 11-6. And they lose momentum. And that happened 2 years ago, and they missed the playoffs because of it. They were like totally primed. They were like, 6-3 or whatever, and were totally primed to go to the playoffs. And then they lost 6 games at the end of the season, and that kind of went away. So, can the Cardinals prove that they are capable of getting far in the playoffs, or will they just be doomed to be good and just not great? This is probably Cliff Kingsbury's last chance. And I feel like his hot seat is hot enough that he can't just make the playoffs. He has to win the division and win a couple playoff games to keep his head coaching job. Because if there's another blowout loss like the Rams and Cardinals playoff loss last year, he's going to be fired, I think, unless like there's a really good reason for it. Unless J.J. Watt, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, and I don't know, everybody else on that team gets injured in like the first quarter of the game, I think that his job is definitely in jeopardy. I would just love to watch and see Cliff Kingsbury be on the hot seat. He always looks like he's like worried about something. He's always like, did I leave the oven on? He's always like, I don't know. He's got a very interesting face. And so, it's going to be even more fun to see him actually sweating whenever they're down any game. But yeah, I also want to see how the whole, Kyler Murray's contract. Obviously, that's off-season drama that people just took out of proportion and they just ran with it because it was a story. But there are some things about Kyler Murray's playing and the way he handles himself as a leader and as a quarterback that may show up in this next season. Even though he's got the big contract, I still feel like he's not 100% safe. He's probably 90% safe, and that's contingent on him getting his attitude, just the way he carries himself, getting that in check. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. I just feel like he needs to step it up a level as far as being a leader and, study some film. Yeah, because that was the whole problem with him. He didn't, there's the homework clause in his contract where he had to study 4 hours of film a week. Which they took that out of his contract, which counts as what is it? E-bullying, internet, what online bullying? What is that called? Cyberbullying. All of Twitter cyberbullied the Cardinals until they took that out of his contract. So, and so yeah, I really hope to see the Cardinals do well this offseason, along with all those other teams that I mentioned: the Bengals, Broncos, Philadelphia Eagles, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers.